Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're taking a magnifying glass to the modern American dream to figure out a bizarre, incredibly frustrating paradox. Why is it that playing by the traditional financial rules is leaving so many modern professionals completely exhausted and honestly, mathematically broke? We're going to dive deep into this today. We'll uncover exactly how wealth is actually built, how it's being silently extracted from your pockets right under your nose, and most importantly, how you can finally escape the treadmill once and for all. We really have to start by validating a very real, very pervasive anxiety that so many people are feeling right now. Think about it. You work a grueling 50-hour week. You grind it out. You finally get the big promotion. On paper, you are suddenly in the top 18% of earners in the wealthiest country on earth. And yet, despite doing absolutely everything right, earning a six-figure salary today feels less like reaching the finish line and more like stepping onto a tilted financial treadmill that keeps speeding up. I mean, you're not buying Ferraris, you're not flying private, you're literally just trying to live a normal middle-class life. But at the end of the month, your checking account looks like a high schooler's part-time paycheck. Why does it feel like this? To answer that, we have to look at the cold, hard math. It really all comes down to an absolutely crucial difference between nominal income and real income. That $100,000 nominal income, it looks fantastic on a LinkedIn profile. It sounds great at a dinner party. But the real income, what those dollars can actually buy you at the grocery store or the gas station, tells a vastly different story. The silent thief of inflation has completely redefined our baseline for survival. Because of the ongoing devaluation of the dollar, the $100,000 you earn today only buys what $65,000 bought just a decade ago. It's a staggering drop. We are essentially earning today's wages, but we're trying to survive on yesterday's math, and the numbers simply don't add up anymore. Let's break down where that money actually goes in real life. Let's look at a typical Tuesday for a professional we'll call Alex. After taxes and healthcare just absolutely butcher the paycheck, the actual take-home pay is roughly $5,000. Then, almost immediately you get hit by the big three: housing, transportation, and childcare. At 7 a.m., housing eats $2,800. At 7:30, an F-150 commute slices off another $1,250. By 3 p.m., daycare demands $1,600. Before Alex even buys a single bag of groceries at 6:30 p.m., this massive financial vacuum has already sucked the potential wealth right out of that net pay. And make no mistake, housing is the absolute largest predator in this financial jungle. Stretching your budget for a $500,000 house might easily get approved by a mortgage lender, but you have to remember something critical. A lender evaluates risk to themselves, not comfort for you. When you commit a massive portion of your monthly income to a mortgage, the property taxes, and that unpredictable 1% annual maintenance rule, it traps you. It traps you into being house rich and cash poor. You might have a highly valuable property on paper, sure, but your daily cash flow is completely choked out. It quietly, persistently crowds out your liquidity, robbing you of your actual ability to build spendable wealth and invest over the next 20 years. This whole dynamic leads to the incredibly dangerous illusion of what we call the trophy case net worth. I want you to picture a giant polished glass cabinet holding a shiny house, 2 brand new cars, and some high-end furniture. From across the street, looking into the window, that person looks incredibly wealthy. But here's the catch. That case is filled with assets you cannot spend. Try paying for your weekly groceries or a surprise medical bill or your eventual retirement with a piece of drywall or a car tire. The liquidity crisis becomes obvious really fast. We've been conditioned to measure our wealth in unspendable trophies, not in actual spendable fuel. So what actually happens when we strip away that home equity and look exclusively at the actual fuel? The reality is honestly staggering. When you strip away home equity, the median 401k balance for 55 to 64-year-olds in America is a terrifyingly low $95,000. And to put that into perspective, if we apply the standard 4% withdrawal rule for retirement, that $95,642 barely generates $318 a month. Let that sink in for a second. You simply cannot retire on a trophy, and right now, the liquid corner of the average American's trophy case is practically empty. Why does this exact scenario happen so frequently to so many smart people? It's because the system itself is structurally designed to trap distressed assets in a vicious debt spiral. It's a very specific sequence. It starts with initial debt, borrowing heavily in a currency or at an interest rate you simply do not control. It's actually much like what Mexico did with US dollars back in 1982. Then, inevitably comes the rate shock. The economic environment changes, interest rates rise, and that triggers the squeeze. Your monthly payments absolutely explode, but your income, it remains flat. Finally, the trap snaps shut with forced liquidation. You are desperately forced to sell off your assets at a massive loss just to survive and avoid default. And listen, this institutional playbook isn't just used against everyday homeowners. It is ruthlessly used against giant corporations too. Take the recent corporate drama surrounding MicroStrategy and its massive Bitcoin holdings. Institutions will identify any entity that has heavy, inflexible debt obligations and a countdown clock ticking on its cash reserves. By shorting the stock, they apply massive psychological and market pressure, and they do this without committing a single financial crime. They literally just wait for the cash to drain out. When the distressed entity is finally forced to sell its assets just to keep the lights on, those same institutions swoop right in to buy up those high-value assets at a steep discount. It is a brilliant, ruthless mechanism of wealth extraction. But here is the good news. You absolutely can engineer your way out of this trap. But to do it, you have to initiate a radical identity shift. You have to transition from being a high-performance consumer to becoming a strategic wealth builder. And you do that by aggressively expanding your margin. Let's redefine things right now. True wealth is not the shiny SUV parked in your driveway. It's not the fancy zip code you live in. True wealth is the invisible margin between what you earn and what you spend. If you make 100 grand and you spend 95 grand, mathematically you are poor. But if you make 70 grand and you only spend 45 grand, you are wealthy. It's all about the margin. Building that margin is a very deliberate architectural process. Just look at the simple timeline of committing to a $100 a month investment. Month one isn't about getting rich quick at all. It's about that radical identity shift. You're moving from someone who intends to invest to someone who actually does. By year 5, you're going to hit the first major test, resisting the very real urge to pause those contributions because of lifestyle creep when your income goes up. But if you hold strong to year 10, it becomes an automatic default. At that point, the market starts doing half the heavy lifting for you. And by year 30, you're looking at a 236% return. It is entirely about rewiring your brain to truly understand the power of compounding over decades. When you stick to that long-term timeline, you are aiming for one specific physics-based concept: escape velocity. Think of getting your first $100,000 as pushing a massive 5-ton granite boulder up a steep, muddy hill. You are straining, you're digging your boots into the mud, you are doing 100% of the manual labor, and honestly, it feels like the market is giving you almost nothing in return. But escape velocity is that exact magical crossover point where you finally reach the crest of the hill. Suddenly, you give that boulder a tiny nudge and it starts rolling completely on its own. Your invested capital begins generating more momentum and more income than your physical labor ever could. To really cement this idea, let's compare two totally different paths. Let's look at Caleb's grind. Caleb is starting from absolute zero, saving $1,000 a month. His money engine is basically barely idling. Every single dollar in his account was placed there manually by his own sweat. Now, compare that to Sarah's escalator. Sarah has already fought her way to a $100,000 base. If the market returns an average of 8%, her 100 grand generates an extra $8,000 a year completely automatically, and that's on top of the $1,000 a month she's saving. Her money acts as a free virtual assistant that works 24/7, never takes a sick day, and never complains. She is moving toward true financial freedom twice as fast as Caleb, even if they have the exact same salary. Breaking through to that very first 100 grand is a brutal war of attrition, and it requires you to actively engineer your way there. Step 1 is to maximize tax-advantaged accounts, things like a 401k match or an HSA. This gives you immediate, untouchable returns. You're essentially giving yourself a raise that the IRS cannot touch. Step 2 is to accelerate income velocity. You channel any side hustle income directly into your investments, making it entirely invisible to your daily checking account so you aren't tempted to spend it. And step 3, which is probably the hardest one, practice social decoupling. You absolutely must be willing to ignore the performative wealth of your peers. You have to be okay with looking completely broke to your neighbors while you quietly build an empire in the background. But here is the incredibly harsh reality that awaits even the absolute best planners among us. You still have to actively defend this wealth against late-stage threats. 58%. That is the staggering number of workers who are forced into early retirement, usually right around age 62, due to unforeseen health issues, corporate layoffs, or sudden family emergencies. Only 1 in 5 people who leave the workforce early actually do so by choice. Think about the impact of that. If your financial plan absolutely demands that you work until you're 65, but life violently pushes you out at 62, your entire mathematical architecture breaks down. You also have to rigorously defend your financial fortress against invisible wealth thieves, like fee drag. A standard low-cost index fund charges around 0.03%, but a standard advisor fee is often a full 1%, and managed funds can easily hit 2%. Now, a 1% fee might sound totally tiny, but it doesn't just take a little slice of today's pie, it completely removes the seed capital for tomorrow's compounding. Over a few decades, that tiny 1% fee can silently drain hundreds of thousands of dollars of your potential wealth. Paying a premium just for someone to put you in standard funds is a massive leak in your boat, and it's one you simply cannot afford. And when that 58% reality hits, and you find yourself forced out of the workforce early, you have to rethink everything, including how you handle Social Security. I want you to think of Social Security as the faucet. Imagine a highly pressurized pipe hidden in your wall. Every single year you wait to tap into it, the pressure builds up, and when you finally open the valve, the water flows much harder. But here is the critical catch. It's your water. If you wait too long to open the faucet and pass away early, that water just evaporates. You have to strategically decide the exact perfect moment to open that valve based entirely on your unique survival needs, not just some generic one-size-fits-all advice. So, how does this faucet strategy actually play out in real life? Well, the standard textbook advice from most financial planners is to wait until age 70 to get the maximum monthly payout on paper. But what if you face a real-life crisis? What if the stock market drops 40% the exact same year you're unexpectedly forced to retire? If you have to sell off your index funds at a massive loss just to buy groceries and keep the lights on, you permanently destroy your portfolio. In that specific scenario, turning on the Social Security faucet early acts as a brilliant pressure release valve. It gives you guaranteed government income so you don't have to liquidate your heavily discounted stocks. So, contrary to popular belief, there are incredibly logical, mathematically sound reasons to file early at 62. If you have a poor personal or family health history, taking it early guarantees you actually extract value from the system you paid into. It can unlock spousal benefits for a lower-earning partner. It secures a baseline of income during a brutal market downturn. It even allows you to double dip into your own benefits first before switching to a higher survivor benefit if a spouse receives a terminal diagnosis. And, crucially, it helps you manage your tax brackets before those mandatory required minimum distributions hit your accounts later on. These aren't just fringe options. They are vital strategic levers you can pull to protect your wealth. At the end of the day, whether we are talking about escaping the $100,000 trap, defending your portfolio against predatory fees, or perfectly timing your Social Security faucet, it really all comes back to this one fundamental truth. You cannot retire on a trophy. You have to take a hard, honest inventory of your actual liquid assets. Because the harsh reality is, you simply cannot pay for your future, your medical bills, or your ultimate freedom with the equity locked securely behind the drywall of your house or the perceived status of the shiny SUV parked in your driveway. So, it all comes down to this. You have a choice to make. Will you spend the rest of your life running on a tilted financial treadmill, completely exhausted, continually financing the illusion of the middle-class dream just for your neighbors to see? Or will you audit your life today, cut those heavy financial anchors, do the uncool but absolutely necessary hard math, and build a reality that you actually own? The true measure of wealth isn't stuff, it is freedom. And that freedom is waiting for you on the other side of these decisions. So, it's time to start pushing the boulder.
Thanks for watching. If this gave you a new way to think about your wealth, subscribe to Langford Invests. Leave a comment below with the one savings move you're making this year, and I'll see you in the next one.